Today's 2010s in the history books, and economists, politicians, and market gurus are looking ahead to see what 2011 may bring. Of course, there's a mixed bag. Some forecast good times, others predict major challenges. Joe Krier, president of Krier Wealth Management, here to talk about some of those predictions and what we can all do to prepare for a healthier financial 2011. I guess the place to start is, did 2010 set us up for some growth and some positive news in 2011?
I think it did. You know, last week Stacy and I talked about the fact that one of the biggest events of 2010 was the fact that there wasn't a big event. You know, you had BPU and all that stuff going on, but the calamity that we saw in 08 and 09 had people scared to death. 2010 was people just settling in and saying, okay, maybe things are going to be all right after all.
What are the gurus saying about 2011? I mean, there's some pretty positive predictions out there.
Yeah, I mean, across the board, they're looking at this economic recovery to continue, you know, and that is a breath of fresh air. You know, Washington's got it right. They got the message in the midterm elections. Inflation is not out of control at this point. And unfortunately, unemployment's going to stay high. It just does that in a recession this deep and long. And the average estimate is that the stock market goes up 9.3% this year.
But if you look at what the stock market did over the past couple of years, I mean, it's not a straight line. What were you telling me about May?
Oh, for sure. In May of last year, people said, okay, here we go again. And the market had dropped about 12%. Really, the entire gain for 2010 came from September 1st through the end of the year. So even when we talk about predictions and all this, it's never going to be a straight line. It's always going to be choppy.
And of course, some of the things that could also affect both the market and the overall financial climate, if housing prices continue to drop, if the number of foreclosures go up, who knows what's going to happen. So let's talk about some of the worries. You talked about the fact that the economic recovery is going to continue. But there's also the fact that some people have unrealistic expectations about what's ahead for us in the immediate future.
Certainly, yeah, and that's a great point to bring up, that we just can't get too excited about things. And, you know, you mentioned housing and foreclosures. There are pockets of inflation. Oil's hitting highs again here, so you're going to see higher prices at the gas pump eventually. Rick Scott's walking into office today into a $2 billion budget shortfall, as is the governor of California, Illinois, Nevada, New York. The list goes on. This is a pretty huge deal. And sometimes overwhelming optimism, historically, that sets us up for maybe a negative thing. What we're worried about is people getting too excited, going out there, maybe spending money, maybe investing too aggressively, and then being set up for an April or a May, you know, correction, I guess, in the markets.
Let's talk about Florida, with this being Inauguration Day. Chris Christie, who's the governor of New Jersey, basically says, look, you've got to run government more like a business. You don't have the money, you don't buy it. Rick Scott's adopted some of that philosophy. Do you think that his attempts to go ahead and privatize a lot of what Florida government does, his attempt to bring about a public school voucher program and some other things, will be successful in helping Florida deal better economically in 2011?
You know, the key to that is a smooth transition from the public sector to the private sector, and perhaps having a deal with some of those private companies that they're actually going to hire some of these public companies. He's got a mandate to cut 5% of the workforce, and, you know, that's good from a budgetary standpoint, but it also can hurt your economy because you got more unemployed workers out there. He's got a tough challenge here.
Yeah, you talked about the cuts. I mean, he's going to slash something like 6,000 government jobs. At the same time, he says over his tenure, he wants to create 700,000 new jobs in the Sunshine State. Going to be an interesting year. Joe Krier.
Certainly.
We'll be talking again. Thanks very much.